So Sandbox 2.8.0 has a lot of stuff. A lot of tweaks to exotics, buffs to entire archetypes, nerfs to shotgun range, and right now, we are in my favorite time of the sandbox, when nobody knows what the hell is going on. It's the best. It makes people try a few things, maybe play with a few weapons outside of what they previously used, and it makes for a beautiful time inside of the Crucible. However, there's a few changes that it did not take a genius to know would bring about absolute destruction to the current meta. That is, the auto rifle buff, and more significantly, the buffs associated with our exotic auto rifles. Today, guys, I want to cover the exotics, the ones that were directly buffed in the most recent sandbox. We will have a video probably here in the next week going over legendaries. But the three auto rifles, Hardlight, Monte Carlo, and Suros Regime, are absolutely disgusting now. Hands down. So much so that I wanted to go ahead and talk about these weapons even before we start talking about the new ones. Like, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of new weapons, especially returning weapons that look absolutely disgusting, but we got to talk about these exotic autos. So first up, let's just go over the buff. Auto rifles pretty much received a blanket buff across the board outside of high impact autos, which is just like Bungie's way of admitting that they're scared of Dan. Now, out of those three blanket buffs, adaptive frames probably got the biggest buff, percentage wise. Previously, they did 22 per crit and 13.75 per body, but here in Sandbox 2.8.0, that damage got bumped up to 25.2 per crit and 15.75 per body. Actually a ginormous bump, giving us a beautiful time to kill across the board for all 600 round per minute auto rifles of 0.7 seconds. 0.70. Hands down, this is the most competitive auto rifles have ever been. I've never seen a time to kill value on any auto rifle in the history of Destiny 1 and Destiny 2 that has ever met this 0.7 value. Not even Doctrine of Passing in its glory day did it reach the time to kill value that Hardlight and these other 600 round per minute auto rifles are now sitting at with ease. Now I say with ease because there is some uniqueness to these auto rifles that allows them to even go even further. First up, Suros Regime in its spinning up form. In this sandbox, bad stuff happens, fellas. A few weeks ago, we talked about auto rifles to lock down before Season of the Worthy started, and at that time, I thought no way in hell the time to kill values that I was showing on the screen would actually come to fruition. Sorry, fellas, I kind of lied to you. It's not that I didn't think that this auto rifle wouldn't be good. I just thought at the last second, Bungie was going to pull a Houdini on the sandbox and pretty much be like, yes, every other adaptive frame auto rifle got a buff, except things like Suros, Monte, and Hardlight. Now, Suros actually has two forms. Its focus fire form, also known as its dual speed repeater form, and its spinning up form. In this sandbox, you want to use spinning up, fellas. Essentially going from a 0.7 time to kill value at 600 rounds per minute, dropping to 0.58 second time to kill value at 720 rounds per minute, and then dropping to 0.47 seconds at 900 rounds per minute. Needless to say, guys, it's disgusting now. And Suros might even be more disgusting on console. I haven't played with it over there, but just know, in its spinning up form right now, it's absolutely lethal. And again, if you have the exotic catalyst with the ability to heal yourself more often, this makes it even nastier. Now, Monte Carlo. Monte has a lot of utility. Number one, you pretty much always have your melee every single time you're either doing damage with Monte or getting kills with Monte. It's essentially the Monte Carlo method. It's constantly being procced in that way. On top of that, with each consecutive stack of Markov chain here, your damage is increasing, similar to something like Swashbuckler. The downside is, at least with my experience with Monte, it just couldn't hang. Now, don't get me wrong, it's good, but if I had to like rank all of these auto rifles, Monte would be in third place. The real question is which one is better between Suros and Hardlight. From my experience playing in multiple different playlists, Hardlight has somewhat of an edge, and that's simply because it has no damage fall off. That 0.7 time to kill value is maintained, even all the way into pulse rifle territory. And unfortunately, Suros, just like most auto rifles, experience pretty steep damage fall off, which is where Hardlight comes in. It takes everything that you could ever want in an auto rifle, times it by 10, slaps a coat of nasty on it, and I've been saying it for a while now, and I'm saying it again, fellas. I think we're in a Hardlight meta. Like, for real. Like, I think Trials, this coming up weekend, you might see Hardlight as a top 5 weapon being used. Mind-blowing, I know. What's even more mind-blowing is the fact that Bungie has continually kept buffing Hardlight. The reduction in the screen shake, which overnight already made Hardlight a top contender, but then just to go an extra step with it and give it a buff on top of all these things, guys, Hardlight was doing wonders for me. Now, there's something to remember about using Hardlight, and it's kind of different with all these auto rifles. Like with Suros is an absolute shred machine. Pretty much anything 26, 27 meters and below. And if you get good at pre-firing, Suros is a very difficult weapon to compete against. But the only way you can deal with Suros is wait for the guy in front of you to quit shooting before engaging, so at least his rate of fire could reset. Hardlight's a different animal. It's the most spam-tastic weapon I have ever experienced. The more you shoot, the better. Because here's the thing, even when your opponent dips into cover, due to those ricochet rounds doing double damage, you just want to lay on the trigger. Literally hold it down. And some maps, this really shines. Anything that's got like flat surfaces or that's in closed areas, Hardlight does some pretty dirty stuff. And some people actually get really good at the ricochet rounds. I'm not that good at it. I just kind of like put it somewhere where I hope it makes contact. And if you got groups of enemies in small corridors, Hardlight will actually ricochet a number of times, making contact against all of them. So yeah, it's one of those weapons. It may not get the kill every single time your opponent dips back into cover, but it'll tag them at least once. And just tagging them once will keep him from recovering, which means if you do decide to push up, he's still going to be half health, if not one shot. Now, I've had a few people ask, how does Hardlight compare against the new auto rifle Tommy? And then, of course, how does Suros compare against those two as well, as it can reach some pretty crazy time to kill values? Tommy is good. Being a 720 round per minute auto rifle, you're actually looking at like a 0.75 to 0.77 time to kill value optimally. And if you pre-fired it, like we talked about in our review, that time to kill value does drop to 0.5 seconds. But the comparison between Hardlight and Tommy, and even Hardlight and Suros and Tommy, is kind of a hard one to make. I know they're auto rifles, but Tommy definitely behaves very similar to Suros. It's just a shred machine up close. It kills people within 0.5 seconds when you get it fully primed. Definitely deadly, but that's not what Hardlight's trying to do. It's trying to take the most consistent auto rifle you can ever imagine since the reduction there in screen shake and maintain that consistency all the way up into that mid 30 meter range with a lot of different quirks with those ricochet rounds that allows it to be a top contender. So if you want an auto rifle that is super consistent, I think most of us probably already have Hardlight. Locking down the exotic catalyst here with that extra stability, the reduction in that screen shake, as well as the ginormous buff that was given out to all auto rifles today, Hardlight may actually be the weapon I bring into trials this coming up weekend. Now, I was actually rocking a few things today, build-wise, and I wouldn't necessarily call it a build because I was just trying to test out Middle Tree Striker to see how the changes are, which, by the way, are absolutely amazing. The super feels way tankier. It also lasts longer, which is extremely nice, and it seems to almost travel faster, which that could just be in my head. Now, I was using Inertia Override a bunch with these auto rifles, which is why you see the damage values there elevated so much. Super nasty. I didn't know how I was going to feel about Inertia, considering it got that duration bump, as well as a small delay there before it activates. To me, I think it's actually a great change. Probably more specifically for like primary weapons. For special, like if you're pushing into a group of enemies and you want to immediately pick up special, have Inertia Override procced for that particular gunfight, say a shotgun fight, this may actually hurt you. But for primary fights, to be able to slide, pick up ammo, get set, have a half a second there to find your target before Inertia actually kicks on, this was extremely nice. Pairing this with something like Hardlight for that increase in damage with no damage fall off was absolutely disgusting. So guys, that is our review here. I'm curious to know, my console players, how auto rifles are shaking out on your end. Now, over the next few days, we'll be gathering gameplay of like legendary auto rifles. I think Reckless Oracle, I've heard good things about it. Valgadin is also doing very well. Haven't seen anyone using Misfit, although I do think Misfit is going to have a place in the sandbox, considering it can roll with scopes. A few other 600s that I've been hearing good things about, Gnawing Hunger, which I do not have a good roll of. If you happen to have a good roll of Gnawing Hunger and you're in my Discord, feel free to reach out to me. The other auto rifle that's kind of a weird one is Brightneck. And we're probably actually going to review Brightneck individually, as all three of these auto rifle buffs actually affect Brightneck from the precision frame, adaptive frame, and rapid fire frames, as it shifts in rate of fire with each consecutive stack of Rampage. Brightneck might actually have a place here inside of PvP, although that's really going to be dependent on how well its base form is, which is that 450 form. I know it got a bump there in crit shot damage, but at the end of the day, that's not really what that archetype needed. I think it needed more forgiveness. But everybody's so skittish, man, of Uriel's gift and 450s. I don't think we'll ever see 450s be good in Destiny, at least not in the lifetime of Destiny 2. If you have any auto rifles that you've been using in this sandbox that has been shredding and doing well for you, feel free to let me know in the comments below. Like I said, we'll be gathering either like a top 5 video, maybe even a top 10 of best legendary auto rifles, and I want to get that out before the weekend, considering we do have trials coming, and boy, wouldn't that be hilarious if auto rifles are just laying waste to people inside of trials. Well, fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.